morning, everybody, to each and every one of you for this session on circularity in fashion and apparel trade and investment. Very happy that you're all with us. My name is Jeske van Seters. will be the moderator of this session, and we're very happy to kick off actually the EU-Africa Business Forum with our session on Monday morning, at least Monday morning, 10 a.m. Central European time. I know even some of our speakers are in another time zone. So welcome once again. I'm Jeske, Associate Director at ECDPM, the European Centre for Development Policy Management, which is a think and do tank based in Maastricht and Brussels, working on sustainable development with a particular focus on Africa and EU-Africa relations. And one of the topics that we work on as a centre is the circular economy transition and the textile sector, which is the focus of this session, obviously. And Africa knows there's a thriving textile industry, a lot of things happening on the African continent when it comes to the textile sectors, with significant potential for job creation and skills development. But at the same time, we all know that globally the textile sector is also facing severe challenges when it comes to environmental degradation and social issues. So there, transitioning to a circular economy can play a significant role, moving from the linear take resources, make a product, and then dispose of it, to a more circular model. And as sort of the start of this discussion, I just wanted to emphasize that often when we think of circular economy, we think of recycling, which is an important part of a circular economy, but that's not the only part. So also think of keeping products longer, extending the lifetime of products through, for example, repair, refurbishment, reuse, but also at the initial stages of a product life cycle. So change the design of products, using less natural resources in the design, or making sure that it creates less pollution when you design it, knowing at the waste stage. So just keep in mind that circular economy is a lot broader than just recycling, while recycling is an important part of this agenda. And on this, I'd just like to give the floor to Antoinette Tesha for also a few welcoming words. Antoinette is Director Textile and Apparel of MSINGI East Africa, who is also the partner co-organizer of this workshop. And we're very happy to partner with MSINGI in the context of this workshop, but also more broadly on this important topic. So, Ms. Tesha, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hester. Good morning, everyone, wherever you are across the world. As introduced, my name is Antoinette Tesha, and I'm the Director for the Textile and Apparel Program of MSINGI East Africa. MSINGI is a not-for-profit funded by the Gatsby Charitable Foundation. We are domiciled in Kenya and operate across the 4 East African countries, being Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda, as well as Kenya. MSINGI has been around since 2019. Our mandate, or the chosen mandate for the organization, is to accelerate job and income growth in East Africa through creation, through supporting specific value chain that have a high potential for jobs. Hence, we're here today talking about textile and apparel. As an organization, we select the type of industries that meet 3 broad criteria. The first is the East African countries where we operate can achieve a competitive advantage in those specific value chains. The second is that they are priority sectors for the governments. And you'll see across East Africa, textile and apparel have always been priority sectors for the advancement of manufacturing in these countries. And finally, that they have a high potential for job creation for youths, and also technology transfer and acceleration of that technology transfer. Today, we're partnering with our colleagues at ECDPM to discuss what to us is becoming a very interesting and exciting topic. I first want to recognize and thank the EU governments who are here today for embracing the concept of cyclicality and for doing things better in the textile and apparel value chain. As you may be aware, the cyclical fabrics that are being currently explored from a technology perspective, being sisal, coconut, sugarcane, bamboo are all readily available within East Africa and widely available. So using those as a primary production product in many garmentings could easily accelerate the ability to build that into a cyclical recycling or reusing framework. But over and above that, we're here today to learn what the EU is thinking about as it develops its policies. And I think that's why we've partnered with the ECDPM to see how those policies will affect the sector in Eastern Africa to start. And hopefully the work that we do now will be widely used across the region. I don't want to say lots more because we don't have a lot of time this morning, but thank you again for joining us. And thank you to our speakers from Kenya, Ms. Kent and Mr. Thomas from the NEMA Authority. I wish you guys have a great session, and back to you, Yeske.
Thank you very much, Antoinette, for these welcoming words. And I'm happy to now move to our distinguished panel. But before doing so, I just wanted to say that you can engage with your comments, experiences, etc., but also questions, obviously in the chat. As Antoinette was saying, we have a tight schedule. We only have 45 minutes. We will try to get to some questions at the end. Since it's quite short, we're not 100% sure we'll get to it, but we'll really try. If not, we will may also come back to you after the session to react on your and respond to your questions or comments. So feel free to engage in the chat function. And on this, I'd like to give the floor actually to our first panelist, which is Ms. Gurpreet Kent, as Antoinette was saying, from Kenya, being the founder and CEO of a company called T3, which stands for Trash, Thread and Textiles. And it's all in the name. The company is in the process of manufacturing yarn and textile from post-consumer PET bottles, and actually being the first company in the East African region to go from bottle to fashion. It's still in the startup phase, but still has already till date taken over 20 million of plastic bottles out of the environment. And the mission of the company is clearly to create a sustainable polyester supply chain in the region while being environmentally, socially and economically responsible. So both the economic as well as the environmental dimensions. And I'd like to ask you, Ms. Kent, what do you see for your company as the biggest opportunities and challenges in your journey to move from bottle to fashion? And because we also have governments in this call and also as speakers, what are your expectations of the Kenyan government, but also of its international trading partners, such as the EU and its member states, to enable your business and other circular business models to flourish? The floor is yours, Ms. Kent.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be on the panel this morning and getting a chance to discuss circular textiles. So I'll get right into it. I know Yeske has mentioned that we're on a tight time limit. So the biggest challenges we face and the biggest opportunities, it's always good to look at things as you look at the positives first, because you'll always have challenges, but you need to be willing to overcome them. So definitely the environmental aspect, trying to reclaim the plastic, and it's no longer seen as trash. It's no longer confused for food by marine animals, especially whales and turtles. So that's the environmental aspect, which is a huge opportunity. And just to say that it's close to 200 million bottles that we've claimed out of the environment now. The opportunities with social impact are huge because we deal with an informal supply chain. So as we try to formalize that, as we support, youth creating job opportunities, supporting women groups and encouraging them to be the ones who reclaim this plastic and come sell it to us, whether it's just, generally dealing with unemployment, pulling people out of poverty because it gives us an opportunity to purchase the plastic at a higher price. And all in all, just give someone an opportunity to do something. You don't need a formal education. You just need to have the willpower to actually want to do something. So job opportunities, just dealing with the three main problems it's an opportunity to deal with the three main problems the whole world is facing today, which is plastic pollution, unemployment, and poverty. When it comes to the challenges we face, the informal supply chain, however much we see it as an opportunity, is also a challenge. A lot of erratic supply, and just having built a solid supply chain has helped us overcome that. The other challenge definitely falls under government, where there's lack of correct regulation, just not enforcement of extended producer responsibilities and legislation of take-back schemes. So those are some of our biggest challenges that we face when it comes to the collection aspect. And when you look at the end product, it's very new to our region. So just a lot of education and awareness around recycled materials, because a lot of people don't understand, how does a bottle become a garment? A lot of people have the perception that this can only happen with magic. There is no science behind it, and that is one of our greatest challenges when we try to push our product forward. When you think of the textile industry as a whole, the fashion industry as a whole, producers and consumers are becoming a lot more conscious about what they're putting out into the market. A lot of people are a lot more conscious about what they're wearing. So the opportunity for a manufacturer, I think, is huge right now, just to be a part of this supply chain as everyone looks at becoming greener in what they manufacture and what they wear. When we think about government and government support, like I mentioned, just legislation around a bunch of things. How can we have a more formalized collection system? How can we implement take-back schemes that ensure every person brings their plastic bottles back to where they either purchased it or where they've used it? How do we make plastic bottles more recyclable? Are the current bottles in the market recyclable? Probably not 100% of them. How can the government come in and help a recycler like ourselves make sure the bottles are actually recyclable? When it comes to the EU, I think just having treaties with the Kenyan government that make that manufacturers like us could widely make use of, and just the synergy together on how can we send the recycled polyester that we'll be manufacturing to the EU for it to be used over there as an end product. I think just a lot of legislation work needs to be done between both parties and the Kenyan government themselves on how to encourage recycling locally in Kenya.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kent. This is very enlightening, and also there are some clear calls when it comes to the policy environment that you need and that you would welcome for your business to flourish. So on that, I'd like to give the floor to our next distinguished speaker, Mr. Robert Orina, who actually works for the Kenyan government, particularly as Chief Compliance and Enforcement Officer of the National Environmental Management Authority in Kenya, NEMA. And who's in charge of ensuring compliance to the provisions of the environmental laws in Kenya, as well as multilateral environmental agreements. And he has been in the environmental policy space for a long time, also before joining NEMA, for example, as Provincial Director of Environment of the Nairobi province. So, Ms. Orina, also in reaction to what Ms. Kent was saying, what are the current policy measures being implemented to encourage more circular practices in textile value chains in Kenya? Maybe not necessarily always specific to the textile sector, but affecting the textile sector. And also, do you see opportunities for European companies and partners to work with the government, potentially with your agency, but also with the government more broadly, to encourage circularity in the textile value chain that links Kenya with the European market? Over to you, Mr. Orina.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Jessica, for this meeting, and my pleasure to be part of the panelists in these discussions. And I want to, first of all, state that the textile industry is one of those sectors that has been identified by the government to spur the economic growth and create employment opportunities. However, from the government side or the environmental perspective, this is a sector that has also faced quite some compliance challenges due to the discharge of high amounts of chemicals and water consumption that may affect the environment. And when you look at the industry in this country, you find that this sector has continued to operate on a linear pathway for quite some time that focuses on the end of pipe pollution challenge solutions. And it's now clear that it's not going to be expedient just to operate on that pathway because it does not really solve the environmental problems, but later it creates the cost of financing the management of the waste generated. So a quick overview of the legal instruments and policies in Kenya confirm that there is a serious commitment by the government of Kenya in transiting from a linear economy into a circular economy. And when you look at the efforts put in place by the Ministry of Environment and Forestry and Trade and Industrialization, you can see that really there are policies coming on board that will encourage a circular economy or circularity in all sectors. Looking at even from the supreme law of this country, it has clearly identified the right to a clean and healthy environment, where we are emphasizing the protection of the environment for the present and the future generation. This, of course, underscores the fact that we must have proper sanitation standards and safe water and sustainable land use management. So this, looking at that, you'll see that the government of Kenya has given circularity or a circular economy a pace on which then other policies can be anchored. And even when you look at also the Vision 2030, it's very clear that the social pillar has picked waste management as a key national issue that needs to be addressed urgently. And in that, the plastic, especially the plastic menace, has been identified as a very key challenge. And we have seen recently, there are some efforts by the government try to control the plastic use. And I'm happy from the outgoing panelists that out of that, we have seen very good partnerships from private sector who have come on board to try to reuse or try to make use of the waste from the plastic. We operate also under an environmental framework, that's the Environmental Management and Coordination Act, which governs or coordinates environmental matters in this country. And because of its structure, it's a 1999 act, but because of the current issues of circularity, there is a repeal that is going right now. The MCA is being repealed to align it with the good tenets of a circular economy and ensure that we do not emphasize the end of pipe solutions to environmental protection. So you will see that the waste management regulations, which we have aligned with the national solid waste management strategy, is geared towards zero waste. And therefore, it provides opportunities for any efforts that can recycle or enable that we use our resources more efficiently and adopt cleaner production technologies that can enable the products produced are safe for the environment and they are not overexploiting the natural resources. So at the same time, there is the Green Economy Strategy and Implementation Plan that was launched in 2017. This is also promoting sustainable and efficient use of natural resources. So I can say from the government perspective that there is very clear intentions to transit to the circular economy. And currently, we have the extended producer responsibility regulations that is in the process. Once it comes on board, it will assist us in this collection system that has been fading, knowing that the waste management is under the counties, and because there are no proper structures of take back of the waste, that has given a challenge, especially to industries that want to start businesses of either recycling or utilizing the waste materials for other products, like my predecessor has talked. So once this extended producer responsibility comes in force, then as the NEMA, the institution mandated to ensure that environmental governance system is operating well, then we'll be able to coordinate or work with our partners, that's the county governments, to ensure that there is proper waste management systems put in place. In terms of the partnerships with the private industry, we are also working with, especially in the plastic sector, we have brought in several stakeholders to engage and see how best, other than maybe opting for banning of these plastic materials, how best can we make use of them and create a circular use of the same so that we do not end up banning. And currently we have some stakeholders who have come on board, and we are working together to see how we can manage on that. So what I can say, there are very clear intentions of the government to support circularity in various aspects of the industry sector. And the government is working very closely with the private stakeholders and the businesses to ensure that we achieve circularity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Orina, for giving some very concrete also examples of policy initiatives that you're undertaking to support a more circular economy, including the extended producer responsibility schemes, which sounds very familiar to many of us in Europe, obviously. So interesting to hear. From Kenya, we're now moving to a European country with the next speaker, Ms. Vera Groeneveld, who is from the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management in the Netherlands, and functions as Policy Officer Circular Economy. And actually this ministry in the Netherlands is in the lead on what is called the Policy Program for Circular Textiles 2020-2025. So that's actually a textile-specific circular economy plan with all sorts of policy measures. So the Netherlands not only has an overall circular economy strategy, but also a sectoral textile one. And the ministry also engages on the sustainable textiles at the EU level, including on the upcoming sustainable textile strategy that is expected, I think now for the 30th of March to be adopted by the European Commission. And Brussels and the EU is not new to Ms. Vera Groeneveld, because she has worked also for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Netherlands, including for a few years in Brussels at the permanent representation in Brussels. So Ms. Groeneveld, could you tell us about this Dutch policy program for circular textiles? And in this light also what your expectations are, or what the expectations of the Dutch government are of this EU sustainable textile strategy? And in particular, could you explain to us how these agendas, both at the national and the EU level, affect garment manufacturers, including in Africa and beyond, selling or seeking to sell to the European market? The floor is yours, Ms. Groeneveld.
Yes, thank you very much, and good morning from the Netherlands, everyone, where I tune in today. So I'm happy to outline the Dutch circular textile policy in a brief manner. So firstly, the Netherlands wants to achieve indeed this full circular economy in 2050, and to reach that goal, we have in all fields, we have a policy program that focuses solely on the circular textiles. And this program was published in 2020, and it runs until 2025. 5 for Now. And in this policy program, there are steps we want to take and interim targets too. So for 2030, for example, we would like to see that 50% sustainable and recycled material will be used in textiles, and that we do reuse 50% of the textiles. Besides that, this program consists of 3 different phases, as I would call them. So these are the design and production phase, the user phase, and the end-of-life phase that we have. And regarding the end-of-life phase, I heard it already a few times. The Netherlands wants to introduce a national extended producer responsibility in 2023 on textiles. So we're currently working on that. We're putting the legislation in place. And this EPR, as we call it, will make the producers responsible for the products, and in this case, the textiles. And it means that every company that does import textiles to the Dutch market will be made responsible. And the EPR will make the producers responsible for the collection, the reuse, the recycling, and the waste treatment of the textiles. And we hope that by doing this, we can achieve more reuse, less waste, and less pollution. And in addition to this national commitment that we have, the Netherlands is also one of the front runners on circular textiles in the EU context. So in October 2021, together with 10 other EU countries, the Netherlands wrote a joint letter to the European Commission to share our views on the EU strategy for sustainable textiles that is coming out at the end of March indeed. And for us, I would like to exemplify a few specific points that we mentioned in this joint letter and that we think are very important, that I would like to address. So firstly, we are calling for an ambitious strategy. We really hope that that will be put in place. That will focus on the whole value chain. And when it comes to the design and product requirements, we demand for textiles that are repairable and to invest in non-toxic alternatives and high-level recycling technologies. We believe that the EU should focus on the entire textile life cycle and that the production and use of chemicals, materials, and products should be harm-free, safe, and sustainable from the early stage of the design phase. And in addition, we ask for transparency and consumer information. So the transparency needs to be improved and greenwashing must be avoided. We think that consumers do have the right to know the environmental and social impact of the purchase that they make. And this could, for example, be done with a digital product passport for textiles or a mandatory label to inform consumers in a direct, simple, and comprehensive manner about both the environmental and the social impacts of the garment at the moment of the purchase. And lastly, we also as the Netherlands really believe that this EU strategy should focus on the entire textile value chain. So as well, internationally, we as the Netherlands always look for ways to set up international chain cooperation when it comes to circular textiles. For example, when it comes to recycling techniques, I think it's really important to invest in non-toxic alternatives and high-level recycling technologies, together with other countries to actually achieve climate neutral and circular economy together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Groeneveld, to give us a flavor of what's in the Dutch policy program for circular textiles and also your expectations of the EU level sustainable textile strategies, including covering the full supply chain and also engaging with producing countries and producers on this agenda. And it would be, we can do a whole session for a lot longer than 45 minutes to dive into what that means concretely, but we'll leave it at that for now and move to Mr. Bhairav Raja, who's Director for Responsible Business in the Sustainable Business Group of DAI, which is an international development company. And Mr. Raja is originally from Kenya, actually, coincidentally, and is a circular economy practitioner and has delivered work for both private as well as public clients across different areas, including energy, retail, and agribusiness. And recently he has led on research feeding into European Commission and Team Europe initiatives, including the Sustainable Corporate Governance Initiative, which also has a social and environmental dimension on obliging companies to do due diligence, environmental and social human rights due diligence, but also, for example, the carbon border adjustment mechanisms, where he has done work on, and investing in youth business in Africa initiative. So, Mr. Raja, building on the previous three speakers, in your view as circular economy practitioner and expert, how can African and European value chain actors and the public sector work better together to seize the opportunities that more circular approaches bring, including jobs, and avoid potential negative effects? And how can we make circularity in EU-Africa garment trade and investment move forward? The floor is yours, Ms. Raja.
Thank you very much, Jeske, for having me, and thank you very much to all the other panelists. I listened with great interest. So I'd like to reflect firstly that circular business models in the textiles industry are by no means new in Africa per se. And on the contrary, you know, we have to see these as culturally embedded. Now, what do I mean by that? So for centuries, and even in the last recent decades, designers, tailors, other entrepreneurs across the continent, they design, they make, they remake, and they repair garments and footwear on a daily basis. And that does generate employment across the formal and informal sectors. However, I suppose we're talking here about scalable industry, and how do you scale up the circular economy that meets the demand of our EU colleagues and trading partners. So I think we heard very strong reasons around environmental safeguarding and the importance there, and Mr. Arena spoke to that, about how that is important to protect the environment in this example in Kenya. Beyond that, there has to be, for a scalable model, there has to be commercial reasons. So in other words, entrepreneurs seize this as a strong, commercially sustainable opportunity. At the same time, there has to be put in the center economic inclusion, also innovation. We heard about some innovation today. And also, for it to be really successful in the long term, it probably is that it needs to promote cultural identity. In other words, African fashion and domestic users of African fashion, or even external outside of Africa users of African fashion products, for it to be really scalable. So I've got 4 points that I'd like to make as a way to move forward. One is the EU and its African business partners and African governments can look at more circular business models. There's already some great circular business models. For example, instead of importing dyes from Asian economies or European economies, there's the opportunity to create new textile dyes from plants and vegetables. So taking the nature-based richness and resource that Africa has, that's one example. The other is, and we heard from the moderator, Ms. Van Setters, about the sustainable textile strategy, as well as the policy instrument from the government of Netherlands. And that is, there's an opportunity to align macro policy instruments like those of the EU with those national ones from textile industry bodies in Kenya or other parts of Africa, that can drive competitiveness in the industries and ultimately drive access to greener technology and processes that allow perhaps smaller industries to start scaling up. And it's also crucial that the financing and the policy incentives and business commitments are aligned, so that it's not that we're incentivizing recycling over what was underlined at the beginning of this session about reuse and repair being very important, and that recycling ought to remain the loop of last resort for a more scalable, transformative industry. The second point, and this is one that I'm actually particularly excited about, is this concept of regenerative agriculture. So, you know, the African continent produces fibers from natural means, and the cotton is a common fiber, but we also heard from our co-organizer MSINGI that there's other fibers out there, namely coconut, pineapple, spoke about sisal, there's many others, and those have the opportunity to be blended with other textiles to make fabric that could be used at a scalable potential. And that also has a good opportunity to boosting biodiversity resilience. In other words, that the fibers that are created that are stronger, more resilient, using the great soil that many African countries have, that would be good for biodiversity resilience. The last point I'd like to make is that about this circularity of eliminating waste. We heard from Ms. Kent about these take-back schemes in plastics. I would add that in municipal markets across the continent, there's lots of fabric that is wasted, so offcuts or that type of thing. And as Mr. Arena said, in the plastic space, there's this threat of burning plastic. The same is true for fabric and fiber, that it's better to eliminate that waste and increase the circulation of materials to be recycled. And that would make for a cleaner, more regenerative economy that doesn't have negative spillover effects into other industries, whether that's fishing or whether that's tourism and other strong job-creating industries. So the textile sector in Africa has to be seen as part of economic growth alongside other good and parallel sectors and economies. And so those are really my 4 points as a way forward and a way to align between the EU and its African partners.
Thank you very much for sharing your insights and also bringing back points of the previous speakers. And thank you to all the speakers. We will be brutally cut off at 10:45 Central European time, so in about seven minutes. But we do have space for some questions, which I'm very happy about. And I think one key topic that really deserves discussing, because there were a few comments and questions related to that, is actually how circular is the example of T3 in terms of moving from PET bottles to textiles, and not the comment you should go from sort of plastics to plastics, and this is actually downcycling. So do we want to actually be doing this, or do we want to move immediately to higher value retention type of recycling? So Ms. Kent, and also if others have a comment, but maybe to start with Ms. Kent, would you want to react to that?
Yeah, great, thanks. It's a good question. There's a lot of ambiguity regarding this. So first of all, polyester will always be required. A lot of people think that there's replacements for polyester. Polyester has got such unique qualities that cannot be found in natural fibers. So you know, looking at hiking gear, looking at just mountaineering equipment, climbing a mountain would be impossible if you had no polyester garments with you. In fact, if for anyone who's climbed a mountain before, you're asked to only take polyester garments with you. There would be, you know, just something as simple as a blanket and a duvet, just the filling of your pillow. Polyester is a widely used fiber, and it will continue to be widely used, irrespective of it being petroleum-based, until there's enough innovation and research to find a replacement for it. So recycled polyester, when it comes to that, sure, you can make it back from textiles, but the composition of textiles is really complicated. You've got polycotton, you've got elastic with polyester, you've got a lot of different blends. And there is a lot of research happening on how to recycle textiles from textiles, back into textiles, sorry. And meanwhile, what's the alternative? You've got the same polymer in bottles. There's very little bottle-to-bottle recycling happening globally because you've got the bigger players like Nestle and Coca-Cola trying to push for it, but it's not happening at the scale it should be happening at. Secondly, to go from bottle to bottle, you need a very, very good collection system. So the informal system I was talking about earlier cannot allow a bottle to go back into a bottle, at least in Kenya. You've got all these bottles mixed with, chemicals, mixed with toxic waste, mixed with hazardous waste. Everything just goes to the dump site. So until and unless we don't resolve a deeper, bigger issue of solid waste management, it'll be very difficult to go from bottle back into bottle. Making recycled polyester from bottles is actually over 50%, takes over 50% less energy. I don't know if a lot of people know that polyester is actually petroleum based, and so are plastic bottles. When you go from plastic bottles to polyester, you use over 30% less water. So when you look at the bigger picture, making recycled polyester is actually better than virgin polyester. Until and unless there's a replacement for polyester as a whole, recycled polyester, in my opinion, is a circular option. Talking of natural fibers and, pineapple textile and orange textile, and there's so many different innovations coming up. In a country like Kenya and on a continent like Africa, we have bigger problems. We have people who are hungry. We have people who don't have food. Are we really going to start making textile from food? Even if it's food waste that can go towards animals, are we really going to start, as humans, are we so oblivious to what's going on in the world? You can take the plastic waste, convert it into recycled polyester, and you've got, something for the textile industry, as opposed to now using all this land that we have, farming pineapples, making textile out of that. For me, it's a very socioeconomic issue to be using food material to make textile. So I hope that answers the question from my side.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kent, and we could again do a whole session, I think, about it, and it's a discussion that's not finished, I think, but your point is clear. Maybe just very briefly, one question for Ms. Vera Groeneveld on reuse, and to what extent will you promote ambitious targets on reuse at the EU level as part of the EU strategy on sustainable textiles?
Yeah, sure. I just gave an answer to the question as well in the chat, but I think for us it would be very interesting if there would be a EU-wide EPR principle and targets as we have at the national level, if that would be introduced at the EU level besides the national level, would be something we're very interested in. So we hope for a very ambitious EU strategy on textiles, and we're looking forward to it. But we will be surely interested to see actually reuse targets. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ms. Groeneveld. And then we had, and I'm conscious of time, I'm not even sure if my time is exact, I hope, a question on investment needed. There was one particular question on investment needed for the company of Ms. Gilbert, but more generally, how can we promote investments in circular economy transitions in textile, because that will require funding. Bhairav, is that something that you would still want to react on very briefly?
Sure, I can make a start, and if anyone else wants to add, I would say that there's different streams to this. There's one is, how do you get innovative businesses at the early stage? So startup entrepreneurs, how do you get the capital to incentivize certain innovations? But at the same time, if there's no market for that, it's also important to recognize that there's investment up the chain that gets you towards processing facilities that get upgrades from greener technology, or there's the possibility on making it easier, and maybe there's concessional trade finance. So there's finance and investment needs to start from the entrepreneurship level, because otherwise the ideas don't take shape, and then those entrepreneurs need to be supported going forward, and there needs to be other finance and investment points upstream.
Thank you very much, Faraf. Sorry for cutting you, but I'm afraid that we'll be offline very soon. So I just, before that happens, want to thank all the panelists, of course, for your interventions. We will continue working on this topic, I think all of us. And thank you a lot for all the participants for joining us, for also your questions, and we hope to engage with you also in the future on this topic. Thank you very much and wish you a good EU-Africa Business Forum if you'll join other sessions today or later this week. Thank you very much.